Hey everyone, welcome back to Sarah in the Universe. I'm Sarah, and today I am so excited to be doing another video on MaXXXine. This time we are doing a spoiler talk video, so we are going to be talking about a lot of spoilers from MaXXXine. So I just want to emphasize, if you have not watched MaXXXine as yet, you may not want to watch this video because I'm going to be spoiling a lot of stuff. Okay, so that is your final warning. I want to thank those of you who are subscribed to the channel. Thank you so much for staying subscribed and for coming back to check out another video with me. Alright, so without further ado, let's get into the video. Okay, so this is how the video is going to work. I have now seen MaXXXine 3 times. That's right, 3 times a charm, 3 X's in MaXXXine, right? So I basically just took down a lot of notes, each time I watched it, like what I wanted to talk about, and, also made some connections to other things I want to talk about. So I may not get to every single thing from the movie. In fact, I don't even know if I'm going to try and go in order of when the film starts of what I want to talk about, but I may not get to everything. I might miss a lot of things. So I plan on making more videos. All right, so that's how the video is going to work, okay? So I apologize if this is not super structured. But without further ado, let's get into it. Okay. So, I noticed this, I watched MaXXXine for the 3rd time yesterday, and something I noticed was, I love how, so the film, by the way, let's get into what happens before the present day. I love that little video of MaXXXine as a child, and her dad is filming her, and, she's doing Pearl's dance from the audition. Oh my gosh, I just love these connections between MaXXXine and Pearl. Oh, so good. And then, her dad is the one that told her I will not accept a life that I do not deserve. Or I think his was, I do not expect a life that I do not deserve, right? Something like that, I think. But I love how that, became MaXXXine's I will not accept a life that I do not deserve. Oh, so good. Such a great way to start the film. And then where the film really starts is at MaXXXine's audition for the Puritan 2. In a sound stage, right? On the lot. I believe on that one they were on the Warner Brothers lot, if I'm not wrong. Okay. So, and I love how that starts there. I'll come back to that. But I also love how the movie ends with MaXXXine filming the Puritan 2 on another sound stage. Like, what a Hollywood beginning and ending. Beginning with her audition for the Puritan 2, and then ending with her actually filming the Puritan 2. Oh, that is just so good. And I didn't really notice that till yesterday when I watched the film. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so crazy. So I love that. And speaking of her audition, I already said in my non-spoiler review, that was just incredible. Obviously, Mia Goth is such a phenomenal actress. The way that she's able to switch up emotions so fast, how she really got into, just being very emotional during that audition. And then when they're like, thank you, and then she's like, okay. And, oh my gosh, everyone in my theater was always like, whoa. Like, every time I saw that, they were just so blown away. Her performance is just spectacular. She truly does have the X factor. Now, on note of the audition, what I wanted to say, I actually have notes today because there's no way I could remember everything I was going to say. Okay, so now, if you guys remember when in Pearl goes for her audition and she's like, I have to get that, right? For the musical troupe thing. And obviously we know what happened. She didn't get it, even though we all know she deserved to get it. But what did they say to her? They said, we were looking for a blonde. Funny how MaXXXine's blonde in this film, right? Now, I think that's just for a number of reasons. I also want to talk about later on how I think there's a huge connection between Marilyn Monroe and Maxine Minx. I want to talk about that later. But a lot of women go blonde for Hollywood. I think that was just the more favored style, probably back then, And also maybe Maxine's trying to transform herself from, her brunette era from what happened in X, right? She's trying to start a whole new life for herself and make a name for herself in Hollywood. So I love that MaXXXine being blonde in this gets the audition, right? She wins. Now, she couldn't have known that until after, when she gets the part, right? But I love also when she walks out and she's telling all those other girls who are also sitting lined up for their audition, right? Like in Pearl. And she's like, you guys might as well go home. I nailed that. Oh, I love it. So funny. And just gotta love MaXXXine's confidence. I just love that about her. But I just think it's very funny that she got the audition and she's blonde. Pearl would hate her guts. She would hate her guts. It's hilarious. Okay, so something else I want to point out when they pan out to Hollywood Boulevard back in the 80s. I talked about this in my other video where I actually got to go and see the MaXXXine premiere from outside in Hollywood that day. Angeline is there, and Angeline is she's a 80s icon of Hollywood. She had billboards of herself all up in the 80s. She's like, the original influencer, right, of LA. And I love how they actually, you got to pay attention right there in that opening shot of Hollywood Boulevard. They got Angeline's billboard, like literally identical to the ones she had in Hollywood right there. And I thought that was so magnificent. Obviously so true for Hollywood in the 80s. And I love that they paid homage to Angeline and that Angeline was actually at the MaXXXine premiere. That makes so much sense now, and that made me so happy to see. So I love that. I also wrote down that the whole just scene with MaXXXine and Tabby on Hollywood Boulevard just gave me Pretty Woman vibes. Julia Roberts. I love that. I love Pretty Woman. I thought that was so great. I just had to write that down. And then, yes, talking about, Tabby Martin, Halsey, first of all, just how cute was she? I absolutely love Halsey, and I thought she was just so fun and spectacular in this film. But I thought it was really interesting and ominous how she's talking to MaXXXine. They're talking about, horror movies and stuff, and she mentions the Black Dahlia, how that made Elizabeth Short famous for her death. And I thought it was really ominous of Tabby to mention that when later on she goes to what she thinks is a Hollywood party, only to get herself, that's it. Her life was ended very tragically. I thought that was very ominous, but I like that they, foreshadowed that, on Hollywood Boulevard when she and MaXXXine are talking about horror movies. I thought that was so good. Also, way before that, I love the dual split screen that they do throughout the film. Absolutely love that. Love how they did that to show Hollywood Boulevard when they're introducing it in the film. And I love that you see a Linda Carter, character, on Hollywood Boulevard. Even today, we have characters that dress up for photos with tourists. And we see a Linda Carter one in the film, obviously referencing back to X when, MaXXXine's like, I want to be famous like Linda Carter. I think she says something like that. So I love that, right? Oh, so good. All the references. So incredible. Okay, just checking my notes here, making sure. Okay. Gosh, I have so much going on. All right. So on to the next thing. So we find out that, Giancarlo Esposito is playing MaXXXine's agent, which I love. How great was he in this? I'm always so used to seeing Giancarlo play these like villainous characters, which he's absolutely so good at. But funny enough, now of course Giancarlo, a lot of you probably know him as I do, mostly as playing Gus in Breaking Bad. Phenomenal character, phenomenal role. Ironically, in this film, his character reminds me a lot of Saul Goodman. How Saul was that criminal lawyer, as Jesse says. I thought it was so funny how, when MaXXXine had that issue, which I just want to talk about that really quick. I know we're jumping around. She had that issue, right, with Kevin Bacon. How Kevin Bacon, he's working for the killer. And, I have to, say that I love when Elizabeth Debicki's character, who's the director, Elizabeth Bender, tells MaXXXine, whatever you got going on in your life, you need to squash it. And what happens? Giancarlo literally squashes the you-know-what out of Kevin Bacon in his car. That was hilarious. I could not believe that. That was crazy. That was crazy. I couldn't believe it. Even though for some reason I slightly felt bad for Kevin Bacon, but I'm like, this is just a movie. This is not Kevin Bacon's actually fine. Anyway, but, Giancarlo's character was giving me such Saul Goodman vibes, doing all these, just kind of criminal things behind the scenes. I loved that. I thought it was great. So great in that role. He was so perfectly cast. Oh, and I just love seeing him with Mia Goth. So great. So, yeah. Okay, so jumping around again, that scene, which I thought was actually one of the freakiest scenes of the film, where MaXXXine is getting her wax cast done by Sophie Thatcher. That was so scary of her sitting. First of all, I'm super claustrophobic, so I can't imagine getting anything like that done. But when she's getting that done and she's imagining Pearl, touching her, oh my god. But before that, Sophie Thatcher's talking to her, there's a girl in the background. I don't know if you noticed this. She's kind of dressed like Pearl. She's got 2 little pigtails, and she's wearing a turquoise shirt and like an apron, a similar look to what Pearl has. And I don't know if that was done on purpose or if that wasn't, but I couldn't help but think that maybe that was just a little bit of a fun reference to Pearl. So I noticed that. I don't know if it was intentional, but I thought it was cool, and I was wondering if anyone else caught that too and thought the same thing. So I just wanted to mention that there. It's not an Easter egg film, or video, but I'm just talking about some things that I noticed that I didn't know if that was intentional or not. Okay. Jumping around again. Can we talk about that scene with MaXXXine in the alley late at night when that guy thought that he was going to take her out? That has got to be one of my favorite scenes from the film. I mean, MaXXXine just said, not today, you know what? Oh my gosh. I mean, I loved it. I was like, yes, finally seeing, to see a woman in horror. And we've seen women in horror for the longest time. The final girls really, fight back at the monstrous villains that are after them. But seeing MaXXXine be like, you really thought you were going to corner me in this alley late at night and take me out? And she messed that dude up. And it was amazing. I have enjoyed so much watching that scene now 3 times. And the reaction in my theater to that scene is just so hilarious, people's reaction. I love it. It's probably one of my top 3 moments in the movie. I just loved it. Mia, you crushed it. You crushed it, girl. Loved it. Just so good. Okay, so I want to talk about, I think I should know this by now, the 3rd time, Moses Sumney's character, I think his name is Leon, her friend. First of all, I love the video store that he works in. So cool looking for the 80s. I think it's an adult film, right? So funny. But, how tragic was his death? Oh my gosh. I mean, when the killer comes up and he first just slashed behind him, oh my god, I was so sad. I think that was like probably the saddest death for me besides like Blake Halsey's or Tabby's. I was just so sad. I was like, no, they were such good friends, and he's in that video store. I was so sad. Like that was I feel like each time that's really hard for to watch for me, because I just feel so sorry. I wanted him to live. Now speaking of everyone dying around MaXXXine, speaking of all her friends dying, and of course, the detectives, Bobby Cavell's and Michelle Monaghan's characters, go to approach MaXXXine, reminded me a lot of another movie franchise that I want to talk about. Maybe you see that guy above my head right there. Listen, this is purely just me as a fan saying this. I'm not saying this is Ty West inspiration. No. This is just me being a Scream fan, and especially a Scream 3 fan of what I want to say about MaXXXine. Now, in my non-spoiler review, I said that MaXXXine, if you love Scream 3, with a Scream film taking place in Hollywood and, making a movie, you're going to love MaXXXine, because it's very similar, right? So I want to talk about that for this next section of this video, where I think that Sidney Prescott and Maxine Minks have a lot of similarities in this film, okay? So especially with Scream 3. Now, something that I find interesting about X and Pearl and MaXXXine is that in X and Pearl, we knew who the killers were. There wasn't really a surprise. In X, it was Howard and Pearl. And then, in Pearl, it was obviously Pearl. She was a one-woman show, as she likes it. But here, there was a mysterious killer, right, that everyone was kind of like, who's it going to be? And then, obviously what I love about the 2 detectives in this film, they gave me such Dewey and Gail vibes. Like, I know that Gail Weathers is a news lady, and Dewey's the cop, but they gave me such, just like that male-female kind of goofy chemistry that they had, where, Bobby Cavell, he was always like, what, you didn't like my performance? They just gave me such Dewey and Gail vibes, and how, when Michelle would approach MaXXXine, and, they brought her down to the station after, Moses Sumney's character dies, and they were like, hey, you gotta, like, help us out here. I really just gave me Dewey, Gail, and Sidney vibes, which I loved, and I just couldn't help but thinking of that. And of course, talking about, with everyone dying around Sydney Prescott and how, it's just like, she's like, why is this happening to me, kind of thing. And that's exactly what's going on, or actually what has been going on with MaXXXine, right? I guess her original scream was an X when, all of them were being targeted, right? But, she had, she's probably, extremely, I think, traumatized from that as well, having all those, the killings happen in X with her friends and, co-workers, and then now, her friends, like everyone around her is dying too, very much like Miss Sydney, which I thought was really interesting. Okay, and then what I thought really reminded me of Scream 3. Now again, this is gonna be spoilers for Scream 3. If you have not seen Scream 3, just go ahead and skip on through this next part, couple minutes or so. So the reveal of the killer in Scream 3 was Sydney's half sibling, who also was making a movie himself. Now we're just gonna jump to the ending of MaXXXine, who ended up being the killer, her dad, who was also making a movie himself. I love that. And what I loved about that is, if you remember in Scream 3, Sydney goes to Roman's house, her brother, the killer, to go and meet him, right? And, or I don't think it was his house, it was someone else's, but either way, she goes to this fancy Hollywood house to go find out who the killer is. MaXXXine, same thing, she goes to that house on Starlight Drive, finds out about her dad. I couldn't help but think of Scream 3. I was like, oh my god, this is so Scream 3, and finding out the family connection being the killer, which, I'm gonna go ahead and talk about that right now. I haven't really been reading people's reviews and stuff about, what they thought, but I know some people didn't like MaXXXine. I loved it. It's my favorite of the trilogy. I don't know who people expected who else to be the killer. I mean, it makes so much sense for her father to be the killer. It's usually always someone close to you, that's what they said. And of course, her father also being super religious, which very similar to Pearl's mom, who was also super religious. That's really interesting. Of course, he was gonna go after MaXXXine. She left this life of being in that religion for, doing adult entertainment and now being in Hollywood. It makes a lot of sense why he would go after her, So I thought it was a great killer. I thought it made sense. I thought it made sense for MaXXXine's story and her life coming full circle of her wanting to be a star and making it in Hollywood. It made perfect sense to me. I loved it. I really loved it. So I just wanted to talk about that, Scream. Okay, so I realize my video's going on kind of long, but it's fine. We're talking spoilers, so I apologize. Thank you for sticking with me if you're still here. But okay, yeah, we talked about that. Okay, I want to talk about the Universal Studios stuff. Oh my gosh. Okay, so hello, I live here in California. I love going to Universal Studios. The fact that they use that backlash so much and just put in Pearl in the Psycho house, referencing X and the farm. I mean, genius, Ty West. Absolute genius. I don't think I've seen the Universal backlot be used so brilliantly in a film since Big Fat Liar with Paul Giamatti, when they put him in that, flood place. I actually wish we saw Kevin Bacon go through that. I don't know if that was around in the 80s. I think it was. But I think it would be funny if we saw Kevin Bacon go through that flood scene, with MaXXXine running away from him. I thought it was so good. The Universal stuff was definitely one of my favorite parts of the film that I always look forward to over and over. It was just done so well, and such an exciting part of the film, especially for a Hollywood film, a Hollywood slasher. Really well done. Absolutely love that. I think it's such a highlight of the film. Okay, let's talk about Molly, and I want to talk about Molly's awful death that MaXXXine, she goes, because remember, Michelle's character is like, hey, don't you want to help save the next girl? And first MaXXXine's like, oh, she should save herself, but then, she feels a little bit guilty, and it's like, okay, I should go. Unfortunately, she's too late. But oh my gosh, when Molly's body comes out of that suitcase that falls down the stairs, I thought that was so horrifying. I thought it was one of the most horrifying parts of the film, other than Moses Sumney's character's death. And then when you see Lily Collins' head, which is the same expression as her character from the Puritans, the video cover, or the movie poster, and she's talking about how she's famous for that. Genius. It was so horrifying, but at the same time, you're like, this is genius, Ty West. That was so good. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was great. I thought it was really horrifying, and I loved it. Okay, so I just have some of my notes. I'm sorry I'm like jumping around so much. I want to talk about some of the quotes from the film that some of the characters said that I really love. So when Elizabeth Bender, the director, is, taking MaXXXine around the studio lot, and she talks about Hollywood. I don't know how exactly what she says, but she talks about Hollywood being prejudiced against its artists. I thought that was a really interesting quote, and I definitely think that's true. I think Hollywood definitely doesn't really give a lot of artists, directors, writers, actors a lot of room for expression, where everything is very like, you're going to do it this way, you're going to do that. So I really like that she brought that quote up, because I think that's even true, for today. Like, obviously this MaXXXine taking place in the 80s, but I think a lot of Hollywood artists would agree with that quote still. I think it's true. And I really like that quote. I thought it was great. Bobby Cavell's character, the detective, says to MaXXXine when he shows her Tabby's body, right? And he says, he talks about, girls wanting so badly to be famous, they forget that they could become infamous. And I think that's so true on so many levels. I mean, not just for girls, but for anyone in Hollywood, that, Hollywood can be very dangerous in a number of ways, but also you think about the whole thing about letting fame go to your head and other things going on, that, Hollywood just really eats people alive, and they become infamous in, more ways than one. I just thought that was a great quote, like really good quote from that. Also, another I think Elizabeth Bender had some of the best quotes in the film, but when she's going, they're filming, doing stuff for the Puritan 2, and she's trying to fix the blood on Lily Collins' characters, and then Lily Collins shakes MaXXXine's hands, and now she has blood, and I love when Elizabeth Bender's like, now we all have blood on our hands. And I wonder if they were trying to do that to frame, to make it look like Elizabeth Bender is going to be the killer in the film. Now that would have been like so interesting, right? But I still really like that it was MaXXXine's dad, because I'm like, Elizabeth Bender being the killer, like, nah. Because she's making the Puritan too. Like, we want MaXXXine to have her dream career in Hollywood, So, like, wow, yeah. So, I still like the dad being the killer. But I realize this video has now gone on for like 20 minutes. I think there was more I want to say. But I think I'm going to leave it there. If I think of anything else I want to say, I'll bring it up in other videos, because I don't want to make this too long, but I appreciate you guys for watching this. I want to know what you guys thought about MaXXXine. If you noticed anything that I left out or I didn't notice, I want to hear from you guys what you thought. I plan on making so many more videos about MaXXXine, because I am not done talking about this as yet. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was amazing. I want to watch this movie over and over again. Guys, I appreciate you so much for checking out another video of MaXXXine with me. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope to see you guys in my next video and talk to you guys really soon. Take care, everyone. Thank you so much.